How are you girls doing?
Yeah, we're pretty good, thanks. It's busy and ramping up for the big XX event next week.
Yes, well, that's obviously that was going to be my first question. Obviously, you're presenting the XX film. I mean, how did you guys get involved in that? Because it seems to be a step up from what you were doing in terms of, you're almost going as a nationwide expansion of the brand.
Well, this is the first time that we're doing something like this as a one-night only type presentation. We've been looking out for XX for a while now, ever since it got announced, and we're really curious to see kind of what the reactions were after it screened in Sundance earlier this year. So when we realized that it did have a UK distribution deal, we kind of we started working together with the UK distributor to do something around the film and to screen it on the big screen. And we thought that it really had potential to screen it, not just do one event in London, but to be able to create this nationwide moment in different cinemas across the UK for everyone and watching XX and give it that little push as well to support the film.
Yeah.
It's actually the second time we branched out to kind of UK-wide stuff. Earlier this year we did a sort of UK-wide tour of Annabelle as the Love Witch.
Oh, right.
And we actually travelled around the country with the film, did kind of various events. So we did some Skype Q&As with Anna. We threw a bloody tea party as well at one of the sites in Sheffield, and kind of took the opportunity to kind of add a kind of more personal touch to the release of that film and really give the time for Anna to come over to kind of contextualise it and ensure kind of people really understood the background of it as well.
Yeah, because it looks they're not. A lot of the stuff you've been doing isn't just a screening. It's quite an immersive experience. Like I know you did kind of the prom party with the Carrie screening and like you say a kind of tea party with that. So it's not just screenings that you did. They're like immersive experiences almost.
Yeah, we always make a point to make all of our screenings an event. So either if it's this is really, I think, one of the only exceptions because we're not going to be able to be in 10 different places at once at the same time, although we did try. But we're always there to host the screenings. We're always stick around after the screening to talk to people because we're really interested in kind of creating that discussion scenario, to talking to people and seeing what their reactions are about the films and how they engage with them and seeing their reaction as well. But yeah, with every single event that we do, we try to bring something different to it. Sometimes it's inspired by the film, sometimes we want to make more of a celebration of it, like with the Carrie Bloody Prom Party. We also quite often work with partners to see how we can bring an extra something to people who come to the events. So for instance, with Olivia mentioned all of the different types of stuff that we did with the Love Witch around the country. After that, we also screened Annabella's 16mm prints, her own prints of her short films,
right.
And partnered with Movie because they were showing Anna's first feature, Viva, on their service as well. So it's things like that, and we're always talking to people and see how we can work together to kind of maximize the event as well and bring something different. We also always create these zines that we design and produce and print ourselves to give away to all the people who are coming to our events as well. So that's like an extra something that we always put in to make each event unique and kind of encourage people as well to be there in person.
Yeah.
Something that we always create those extra somethings that we then never repeat, we never sell online. They're essentially kind of created specifically for that one moment and that one event.
Yeah.
One of the things that's kind of really important to us to define ourselves is we want it to be kind of inclusive thing, not just us sort of preaching at people. So we really like having that kind of space after our events to kind of have the opportunity to talk to people more about kind of whatever event we put on or the film in particular, or just talk about horror in general. One of the first times we did that, you're right, was with the Carrie Bloody Prom Party, and part of that was because we wanted to throw a bloody prom party because it was fun, and we wanted to make a bloody bucket, but also it was such a special occasion because we got the opportunity to talk to loads of different people about the film, coming from a lot of different backgrounds. Like some people had never seen Carrie before, which to me was just like, oh my god, you must have just had the time of your life. And and some people were really seeing it in a different light because we were kind of presenting it in a different way. So it's quite important to us that we have those kind of opportunities afterwards. We want to kind of encourage this as a conversation, so the more and more we can kind of get people talking about it, is the better.
And that looking at kind of what you've got coming up as well, that looks like something you're doing, because I noticed your first birthday. You looks like you're very much. It's a case of let's go out and talk about horror.
Yeah, I mean, ever since we started the Final Girls, we've had loads of interviews with people and loads of kind of conversations. People are like, "Why do you like this stuff? It's really disgusting. Like, you know, that's not the kind of perception of like femininity. You shouldn't be like enjoying watching people being slashed." And we're like, "Well, this is really super fun." So we wanted to kind of turn that on its head and kind of create an event around it, and also to celebrate our first birthday. And kind of get some really exciting people in the room to talk about why you like horror, and to talk about it as a genre, and talk about why it's so exciting and why people should be talking about it, and why people should be talking about women in horror. So we're going to be doing like a series of lightning talks as part of that. We've got some incredible speakers we can confirm.
We're going to be announcing them, adding onto that in a couple of days. Yeah. But it's really fun because we've also partnered with Shudder on it, which is an online horror-only streaming service. Yeah. And we're creating a selection of films for them for the month of May, which will be available there online. And we're also going to commission different people to write a bit about why they love horror, why it's the genre. It's sometimes, a lot of the times, people can be a bit snobbish about it and think that it's just trashy or just exploitation, that it doesn't have any art to it, that it isn't like an important part of cinema or an important genre in cinema. So kind of famous with the approach that Olivia was mentioning, kind of putting the conversation around horror and women in horror, turning it on its head and putting it full front and center, and kind of giving people really incredibly intelligent, established speakers a chance to talk about their love for genre as opposed to being on the defensive. We want to create a kind of a welcoming and discursive space for people to celebrate what they love about the genre, what made them fall in love with it, what characters they're still enamored with or haunted by. And same with the zine, special edition of it that we're creating for the event, especially. It's also another kind of platform for different people to speak about why they love genre, why it is needs to be celebrated in all its gore and glory.
Yeah, I mean that was nice. You mentioned kind of the snobbish attitude. That was something I picked up on because I watched you were on Newsnight, weren't you, Anna? With and that was something I picked up on as kind of the question of kind of why you liked horror and stuff like that. And it's interesting that people kind of who don't enjoy it question it so much.
Yeah,
it's just they're just films at the end of the day. Like,
it's really interesting because we get asked that a lot, and it made us, being asked those questions made us really think about the answers as well, and think about actually why do we love it so much? What really made those films, that genre, stick with us? Because we both kind of came to horror from different angles and at different ages, maybe a bit too young for our own good, but who's going to decide that? But in a way, it was always because of the feeling it left you with, and being, especially in the cinema, that being a very and truly shared experience, because it's kind of also a contagious element. When you're watching a scary movie and it actually deeply frightens you, it becomes a visceral experience. You're physically affected by it, and that also becomes contagious with the other people in the room. Like if somebody screams when you're watching a scary film, you're shocked as well, and you react to it. Either you giggle or you laugh, or you also scream. Kind of the same reaction happens with a comedy when it really clicks with an audience and everybody laughs. You're more inclined and kind of pushed to laugh as well because of that contagious community element of it. So that's also one of the things that we really wanted to highlight. And horror and genre in particular have already such strong established communities around it. We just wanted to highlight that a lot of those people are women, and sometimes it's something that you don't talk about that much because, again, it seems kind of, there is a perception of it of being a genre that is not going to be interesting for women. Not necessarily ever been marketed for women. It's never kind of been a place where women have felt like they can express their love for the genre, or even when they're creating film as filmmakers, that it's something that would be encouraged necessarily. So we just kind of want to break through all of that and bring horror as a
as a really fully fledged artistic genre of filmmaking, but also to create that space where anybody, whether they're a casual horror cinema goer or just a casual cinema goer, can go and engage with it in a really welcoming and creative and discursive space.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned obviously kind of the kind of groups watching horror. I mean, I've always had my best experience. Just like I remember, even though I'd seen The Thing a million times before, the best time I've ever seen that movie is when the piece about 2 years ago, when the Prince Charles screened it on 70mm, and like that experience that was the best time I've ever seen that film, because
it's a radically different experience. Like even we often, I think always, except with some of the screenings we stay in for our own screenings. And the first time we screened The Love Witch on the big screen was we'd seen it a couple of times already, but it was an entirely different experience.
And likewise with Single White Female.
Yeah.
Single White Female was the most fun screening because we always do like a little show of hands when we do rep screenings. It's like, who's seen this film before? Because we're both obsessed with Single White Female, and the idea of having alien heady heads and face masks was the best thing ever. But we had so many people coming in and be like, I'm so excited to see this for the first time, and I was like, really? I used to record this on TV all the time. Anyway, we just had the best time screening that, because the audience was so vocal throughout the entire film. Audience reactions were just really loud, which sometimes is a little bit off-putting, but people were so down with the film and kind of laughing a lot actually, and really vocal for gasps of breath and stuff like that. So it really makes it for an enjoyable experience for people, and that is something that you can really only kind of admire at its fullest when you're kind of in an audience with lots and lots of people.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned you'd seen The Love Witch before you screened it. Have you seen XX yet, or are you going in blind?
Oh no, we always see all the films we program, because we want to make sure that we're kind of representing it in the best light. Not only were we kind of excited by the premise of XX, but it's also an incredible anthology film. There's some really, really strong short films in there by some of our favourite directors. We're obsessed with Karen Kusama, so anything she ever does, we absolutely adore. And it's always really important to see the films in advance when you're programming them, to frame them in the right way, and make sure you're getting the most out of that and conveying that to the audience.
Yeah, and we're also really excited to be able to chat to Javanka and Karen as well. We're going to be hosting the Skype Q&A with both of them at the Prince Charles event next week. So it's this sort of moment where we want to be able to create a bigger conversation around it, and sometimes creating these events that are a bit more high profile and that kind of involve the filmmakers as well. And thank God for Skype, because it gives us the opportunity to have them speak to UK audiences, even though they're not able to be here in person.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So something that you wouldn't have had 10 years ago, you had to. It was very rare that you got a kind of Q&A in, that way. Very rare. I think I've seen about 2 Q&As usually with Kevin Smith, to be honest.
Skype really opens up a whole new world. For The Love Witch was so important because Anna couldn't make it over, and she, everything she does in that film is so personal. She not just only directed it, she edited it, she set design, she composed music. So it was wholly hers. So for her to then turn around and not be part of that, this is, quite significant for her. So it was a way of keeping her involved. We had the laptop faces, you could see the audience and kind of really talk and engage with them, and it was really lovely. And because it was always us she was speaking to, she kind of felt like she was living vicariously through us, which was really nice. And that's why we've really kind of fallen in love with that idea. It's always great to have the filmmakers there to come and talk about their films. Yes, we can sit and fangirl about them, but we're not the people that made them.
Yeah.
It's really opened up a lot of possibilities.
And it's especially important for us when it's female filmmakers as well, to be able to give that extra kind of additional element, to be able to hear from them, to be able to speak with them. It's something that we really kind of it's really important for us to push and be able to provide that platform as well.
Yeah. And the film obviously marks the debut of Annie Clark, who I didn't even realise she was into filmmaking. Obviously I know her as St Vincent, so that's it looks like it's an interesting mix of kind of experience and then kind of debuting filmmakers within XX.
Yeah, I mean, Javanka and Karen are kind of more established sort of filmmakers. Roxanne Benjamin produced the VHS series, so she's got a real background in anthologies.
But it's her first work as a director
director.
Yeah,
actually.
which is really exciting. And St Vincent came on quite late, but you can really tell it's got her style throughout the entirety of the film, and it's a really, out of all of them, it's got such a distinctive tone about it, and it stars the kind of amazing Melanie Linsky as well.
The story behind how XX came together is actually really interesting as well, and it's one of the things that we're really looking forward to talking to them about at the Prince Charles event, because actually none of the directors who directed the segments for the film, for the anthology, actually knew what was going on with the other ones.
All right.
They kind of all created their individual pieces, kind of as standalone films, and they're all in the film. They're all kind of, they don't relate to each other narratively in any way, except they're all kind of pieced together with this really beautiful, creepy, gorgeous animation by Sofia Carrillo. So that's kind of the only linking element between all of the shorts.
I mean, talking about you guys kind of historically, I'm sure it's a question you've been asked quite often, but what kind of got you into the horror genre? I know, Anna, you've said that kind of Nightmare on Elm Street was the first kind of horror film that kind of affected you. What was it that got you into the genre?
I think it's just that feeling when you watch a film. You know, I mean, one of the best examples is last year I rewatched Candyman for like the first time in like 15 years, because my sister, when I was younger, made me watch it when I was like far too young, and so 15 years I was like terrified of this film. That feeling doesn't stay with you in any other genre. I don't sit here and think, oh god, I'm still really in love with Hugh Grant from like that time I watched Nottingham 15 years ago, but I'm still terrified and think that, like, because I watched Insidious 3, that like the hand's going to jump like from the side of my bed at night when I'm kind of like alone and it's dark. It's a really unique, it stays with you, it stays in the back of your head, and that's really a unique thing about the whole genre as a whole, which is super exciting.
Yeah, exactly. It's very similar. Like I've mentioned a couple of times that Nightmare on Elm Street gave me nightmares for about a month, and then I got over it and just continued chasing more and more horror films. But like when I tried to watch it for the first time when I was about 8 or 9, I just couldn't, and I only managed to actually watch the entire thing when I was in my 20s.
Yeah, it's also really addictive. You know, horror is about extremity, so you know it's when like who can go the furthest.
Yeah.
You know, where the boundaries lie, and you know you want to be part of that. It's like, I've kind of experienced this, now I want to experience the next thing. So you keep going and going.
To get weirdly competitive. It's like, oh, it's 9 a.m. Are you watching Saw 4?
Saturday mornings watching Saw.
Are there specific subgenres that kind of affect you more than others? Because I can't, for instance, like I'm ghost movies and anything with ghosts and aliens, just like I can't deal with it for some reason. I think it's the kind of fear that slasher movies tend to have a boundary they can reach, but with ghost movies anything's possible.
Yeah, I think anything that like doesn't actually reveal it is always terrifying to me, or something that's like very like Ring, that, you know, I still think Samara's going to come out at the end of my TV at the end of my bed. I should really reposition that TV. You know, anything that's like so subtle like that, that's really unplausible, but like
I think also sound. Yeah, and films, especially psychological kind of horror and ghost-based horror films that know how to use sound really effectively. I mean, even films like Ring, obviously, and a lot of Japanese horror, but also The Babadook was really creepy, still really creeps me out. Just like kind of the very distinctive noise, or Repulsion, the Polanski film. Is intensely creepy because it gets into your skin through different means, and sound is a really, really powerful one of them.
I'm definitely with you on Babadook. That one was, yeah, that and Insidious for some reason I can't. Insidious is the worst. Obviously, kind of we've had kind of the Love Witch and Revenge this year. Is there anything else kind of that you've got on your radar that people should be keeping their eyes out for?
There's loads of super exciting stuff. People should go onto Shudder and watch Dearest Sister, which is such an awesome film. Yeah. We really love it. It's one of the first female-directed horror films. The first female-directed horror film to come out now. Maybe it's the second one, because Maddie directed the first one. Oh, there you go.
She's the only female horror director.
Yeah, we love Maddie Doe, and her second feature is absolutely incredible. It's available on Shudder.
Very creepy, and if you're into ghosts, then you'll like that.
Yeah, but we're also excited
it was now.
Yeah.
I loved Raw.
Yeah, everyone should go and see Raw.
Yeah, Raw's been the one I want to go see. I was just watching some of the kind of interviews with the director, and obviously that she's had some reactions off that she didn't necessarily want, but have probably created a bit of interest in the film.
It's absolutely fantastic, and I think it's even not really a horror film per se. It's very much a mix of genres, but really drained from the history of body horror. And if you've read interviews with Julia, she's a huge horror fan as well, so she kind of really knowingly brings in a lot of influences into Raw. But it's such a beautiful coming of age tale as well. I think every teenage girl should see it.
I mean, one thing, obviously, the name The Final Girl comes from kind of the classic kind of horror trope of that kind of last lady standing. But something I've kind of not, it's a kind of trope that seems to have been missing from the last couple of years. In that, there's been not as many films that have that trope. Do you think we're going to see a comeback of kind of slasher movies with kind of the last girl as part of it? The closest I could think of was Rocky and Don't Breathe, where she's the last proper final girl I've seen in a while.
I don't know. I still think it's very prominent. The term itself comes from a famous book called Men, Women in Chainsaws.
Yeah,
not that film. Like Carol Clover, who is a trope that's associated with the general stereotypes that you see in kind of stemming from kind of the 70s, 80s slasher films, where the final girl would be the one who doesn't have sex on screen, she doesn't do drugs, she's brunette. The thing about it is there's a lot of kind of people trying to turn that on their head. There's a lot more kind of meta horror coming through, things like Your Ex and stuff like that. Cabin in the Wood. But one of the things about it is, yes, they might not necessarily follow that formula, but there's still not many they're either aware of it, and there's still not many diverse roles for women in horror. Sometimes a lot of people are still creating that same role, whether it's the kind of like half naked girl who's kind of objectified, then eventually her friends killed. And it's stepping outside of that and thinking about it's such an interesting genre that you can do so many things with, and kind of putting out and really highlighting people who are doing that.
I'll finish on kind of one question, which is, if you could put 3 horror movies into a time capsule for people to discover in 200 years, what are you putting in there?
Okay, you pick one, I'll pick one, and then we'll pick one together.
I'm torn between Ginger Snaps and Raw.
Okay, let's put Ginger Snaps Raw, and then
Rosemary's Baby.
No, the Mad Asian song we watched, Carved.
Oh, God. Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah, go for it.
So Ginger Snaps, Raw, and
Carved.
Brilliant. I will